Our new moderator tonight is former delegate Bob Brink. And those of you who do not know, Bob Brink represented Arlington's 48th district in the Virginia House of Delegates from 1998 to 2014, where he became a senior member of the Appropriations Committee and the ranking Democrat on Privileges and Elections. A lawyer by training, he previously served as Deputy Assistant Attorney General at the U.S. Department of Justice and as counsel to 2 congressional committees. In the legislature, he was an early champion of Virginia's Children's Health Insurance Program and led the successful effort to fund teachers of blind and low vision students, for which the National Federation of the Blind of Virginia honored him in 2013. After leaving the House, he served as Virginia's Deputy Commissioner for Aging Services and as Governor Terry McAuliffe's Senior Legislative Advisor, and he later chaired the Virginia State Board of Elections from 2019 to 2023. A longtime Arlington civic activist, Delegate Brink is also a former chair of the Virginia Foundation for the Humanities. Ladies and gentlemen, I am pleased to welcome your moderator for tonight, Delegate Bob Brink.
Thank you, Paul. That guy sounds really impressive. I'd like to meet him sometime. Thank you all for coming out tonight. This is a not unexpected, but tremendous turnout. One thing, if you haven't done so already, could you put your cell phones on stun? That'll be great. Tonight we have 3 candidates for the county board. They are in alphabetical order: Matt Ferranti, James DeVita, and Julie Farnam. We're going to, Paul, are we going to draw at this time? It's already drawn. Very good. Tonight's exercise is 80 minutes long. Let me go over very briefly what the format will be. Each of the candidates will have an opening statement of 4 minutes. I will pose questions to them, both some that have been prepared previously and those that you can write down on note cards. Who are the 2? There we go. Great. And so you can write down your questions, and we will attempt to ask them also. At the end of the questions, each of the candidates will have a closing statement of 2 minutes each. Now, there's one thing that I do want to point out. This forum is going to be 80 minutes long, which is a pretty good chunk of time for anybody. But we're not sure that we'll be able to get to all the questions that each of you have for the candidates. So what we're going to do at the end of the meeting is we'll put up a slide over there with the email addresses of each of the candidates so that you can pose your questions on various issues to them directly. With that, I would like to bring up to the stage Matt Ferranti. Hey, buddy. Yeah. James DeVita. And Julie Farnam.
James, you first.
All right, I understand that the order that's been drawn is Mr. DeVita, followed by Julie Farnam, followed by Matt Ferranti. So if the mic is working, Mr. DeVita.
Yep. All right. Just speak into it. Hello. Oh, very good. All right. Hello. There you go. Arlington voters and fellow Democrats, it's time for change. Under the current administration, Arlington currently has a 24% commercial vacancy rate, a 28% vacancy rate in the police department, a 25% vacancy rate in the sheriff's department, and a 7% vacancy rate in the sheriff's department. In the sheriff's department. According to Arlington Now, unemployment is up 50% since the start of the Trump administration. Why is this important? Well, first of all, the lack of new business, as reflected in the commercial vacancy rate, is contributing to increased unemployment and making your taxes go up. And that's making Arlington less affordable, especially for people in this area who've already been hard hit by Trump's purge of the federal government. Second, the vacancy rate in the police, fire, and sheriff's departments affect public safety. I've talked to the police chief and the fire chief and the sheriff, and they're all struggling to fill the positions they need to fill to ensure that the citizens of Arlington are safe. The police department doesn't even have enough people to fully staff their patrols. The current incumbent also continues to advocate for the missing middle, a zoning change which, if it is ever allowed to take effect by the Virginia Supreme Court, will not produce affordable housing, and it will overcrowd Arlington's single-family neighborhoods and public schools, make it impossible to find parking, overwhelm our sewer and stormwater drainage system, and irrevocably change the character of our single-family neighborhoods. Do I have a solution to these problems? Yes, I do. The first thing I would like to do is to bring new business to Arlington so that we can cut unemployment and lower your taxes by generating new tax revenue from new business. I do this by recruiting businesses. I actually set up a portion of the government to go out and seek out new business for Arlington. I'd reform the permitting process. My understanding is this time it can take up to a year to get permitting through Arlington. That's way too long. I'd also look at relaxing zoning regulations to accommodate new types of business. I'd also look at temporarily reducing or eliminating business taxes to offer new businesses a lower introductory rate to get them in the door. To resolve staffing problems and increase public safety, I propose that Arlington County offer free housing for 1 year for all new police, fire, and deputy sheriff recruits. I believe that if you work for the county, you ought to be able to live in the county. And if we make this offer to new recruits, we'll solve our staffing problems and provide affordable housing for at least one segment of the population at the same time. Can we afford it? Yes, we can. I estimate that the cost of providing a one-bedroom apartment for all the recruits at about $3.3 million. Arlington's annual budget is $1.7 billion. There are two other things I'd like to focus on. One is a Bill of Rights for people who live in apartments and condominiums. And at this point in time, candidates cannot go out and talk to people in apartments and condo buildings. You can't even get in the door. I think that's unfair. I think that people who live in apartments and condominiums should have the same access to political information that everybody else does. And the last thing I'd like to do, I think Arlington should be the best county in Virginia. I think that we should be number one. And what I propose is an art center. I'd like to have an art center built down by the river that has opera, theater, symphony, a first-class opera center to take the place of the Kennedy Center that Donald Trump has destroyed. Arlington County, it's time for change. Vote DeVita for county board. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vita. Ms. Farnam?
Hi, everyone. I'm Julie Farnam. I'm a mom to 2 children who attend Arlington Public Schools. I'm a small business owner here in Arlington. I'm a former senior executive in the federal government. I've been active in the community for years. Tonight, I'm asking for your vote. The average Democratic voter here in Arlington and indeed nationally are really fed up with the establishment because the party has stopped being responsive to people's needs and we've stopped using common sense. As a party, we're out of touch with the average hardworking American, and the same is very true here in Arlington. When I hear county board members mention at county board meetings things like having a sleep coach for their baby, or when I hear a county board member suggest that parents should drive their children long distances to access sports programming, it comes across as out of touch with the reality for so many people in our community. And we see that same insensitivity influencing decisions made on the county board, like raising our taxes. Again, so many people are financially strained right now. Arlington's unemployment rate, as James mentioned, has increased over 50% over the past 2 years. Housing prices have increased in Arlington by 39% over the past 10 years. Our board did not put in the work to find alternatives to raising taxes this year, and that's disappointing to say the least. And for some, it's devastating. Instead of cutting elective programs like our spending over $300,000 a year to collect food scraps, instead of seeking out alternative sources of revenue like increasing parking ticket rates, which would generate millions of dollars in additional revenue, we're telling residents to cough up the money, even at a time when they don't have it. Our county board has not demonstrated that they understand or can relate to the impact the decisions they make have on the people who are struggling to pay their bills, people who have lost their jobs, people who are busting their butts to put food on the table. Friendliness and likability alone don't get the job done at a time when bold leadership is required. The role of our government, especially at the local level, is to care for people. And that will be at the forefront of everything I do if I were elected to the county board. These are several concrete initiatives that I would support if I'm elected. I will look for new sources of revenue instead of raising our property taxes. I will eliminate the programs that are discretionary and maybe we don't need them in our current financial situation. I'll leverage more community-based organizations to provide some of the services the county currently provides because they can often deliver services to those who need them faster and at a lower cost, like some behavioral healthcare services. I will review our housing policy to find solutions that create affordability, equity, and housing diversity in actuality, not just hypothetically, because what we have now is increasing the cost of housing, not reducing it. I will let voters decide if and how they want to change the governance structure. I will provide on the county website resources that are helpful to the entire immigrant community, documented and undocumented alike, as all are welcomed in Arlington and deserve our support. It's time for a change on the county board. I'm someone who has the leadership experience, who will dig into the data, who will listen to the community, and who has the backbone to challenge the status quo to get solutions that make the lives of those who live here easier. Early voting begins June 18th. The primary is August 4th. Please rank Julie Farnam #1. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Farnam. Mr. Ferranti?
Good evening, Arlington Democrats. It's been 1,303 days since I had the honor of being your nominee. I've woken up every day since I was your nominee in the last election in 2022, trying to make these things better for all Arlingtonians. I seek your nomination to serve you on the board with a full heart, proud of being an Arlington Democrat, proud of the work I've done on our shared ideas on the board, and determined to deliver for you if I have the opportunity to continue serving. Since I ran in 2022, my wife and I have welcomed 2 children into the world. I love being a dad. I think everybody who knows me knows that. It has meant far fewer posts on social media, but a whole bunch more memories that I will cherish forever. Being a father has reinforced for me how precious life is. That, I believe, has helped me serve you better. We do face a difficult moment now. Economically, our federal workers and contractors are at risk, and socially and physically, our immigrant families and most vulnerable are too. The Trump presidency is a different challenge from COVID, but it is as significant as any challenge we faced in 50 years. I'm seeking re-election to help meet this moment by adapting our economy and strengthening our commitment to opportunity for everyone. If you make me your nominee, I'll protect and strengthen the inclusive, compassionate community we love. 4 years ago, I promised to work on the priorities that led me to seek this office in the first place: inclusive economic growth, housing, climate change, hunger, and education. I also pledged to work on racial equity and justice, and I specifically pledged to improve healthcare at our jail and collaborate on diversion with our stakeholders, many of whom are in this room: our sheriff, our Commonwealth's attorneys, safety conditions on Carlin Springs Road, and I promised to help move us towards electric buses to combat climate change. I've delivered on those priorities. This year, I've pared down. We're focused on 4 items: protecting our economy, our most vulnerable, public safety, and the investments that have made Arlington a great place to live. That means our federal employees and our immigrant families, and fighting against the Trump administration's inhumane policies. It also means investing in addressing our vacancies in our police department and the mandatory holds that are happening to our firefighters. We did that in this year's budget. If you vote to allow me to continue, I'll help to meet this moment on our economy by continuing to transition our office buildings to residential. And I am proud that on inclusive economic growth, I have the support of Nova Labor and the building trades. I will also work to solidify Metro on affordable home ownership and scaling community engagement on residential energy efficiency. On climate, education, and hunger, three things that are hallmarks of what we've done over the past 7 years in Arlington. I ask you to consider the support I have earned from the Sierra Clubs, Potomac River Group, every member of the school board, and every delegate and senator from Arlington. But don't take their word for it. I'm honored to have their support as well as Congressman Beyer. Go to my website, look at my ideas for the next 4 years. Those focus on key issues like affordability for homeowners and affordability for renters. And they acknowledge that affordable housing is also a piece of what we must do. 2 weeks ago, I was called by a business owner on Columbia Pike and asked about the unhoused. It's an individual at Barton Street on Columbia Pike, and I helped convene the business stakeholders and our county staff last Friday night. He was picked up by Path Forward, and he is getting services now. That's not to my credit. It's to our staff's credit, but it is part of what I do as a convener. If you give me the honor of serving you these next 4 years, I will continue that hard work. I'd ask to earn your vote between June 18th and August 4th. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ferranti. Now we'll go into the question portion of the forum. Each candidate will receive 2 minutes to respond to each question. We'll ask as many questions as we can for the next 45 minutes, and then we'll allow enough time for closing statements from the candidates. The first question is going to be about economic resilience. The Trump administration's federal workforce cuts and contract cancellations are hitting Arlington harder than probably any other community in the nation. Now, what is your strategy for protecting Arlington's tax base and local economy and the residents who rely on it so as that instability continues? Mr. DeVita, followed by Ms. Farnam, followed by Mr. Ferranti.
Hello. This is exactly what I was talking about in my opening statement. Drive up and down Columbia Pike, look at all the vacant businesses. 1 out of every 4 businesses in Arlington is vacant under the current incumbent. You have to go out there and recruit new businesses. You've got to bring new business to Arlington for one simple reason. All of your taxes went up. All of your taxes went up because they don't have the business tax revenue to offset what they've lost. Every time we don't bring in businesses, every time we don't have taxes, bring in business taxes, your real estate taxes go up. I want to bring in business. That's one of the primary things I want to do because business makes everything go. If we have more business income tax, we can fund more social programs. We can do more to help people who are down and out. How do you get new business? You go out there and you recruit them. You call them up. You say, hey, why not come and do business here in Arlington? You've got the one of the wealthiest counties in the nation. Why not come and do business here? You make it easy for them to do business by making the permitting process quicker. It shouldn't take a year to set up a business. You go out and you relax zoning regulations. If it doesn't quite fit, make it fit so you can bring in a business. And you reduce or eliminate business taxes initially to get these businesses in the door. Get them in the door so they can start paying taxes so we can lower your taxes. And I think that's important because under the current administration, all your taxes do is go up. And I think there are probably some people in this room that do care about that. So I think that we have got to bring new business to Arlington. We've got to take Columbia Pike and make the Pike the same type of business corridor that we have on Wilson Boulevard. There's no, I live in South Arlington. There's no reason why the Pike has to be a second-class citizen. We deserve to have the same kind of attention from the county board that the business corridor on Wilson Boulevard has. We need to bring in business. We need to bring in business so we can lower your taxes. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Farnam?
That's an excellent question. So similar to what James said, we definitely need to focus on our commercial vacancy rate first and foremost, because when we do have the highest vacancy rate in the DMV, that cost, that loss of revenue gets passed on to property taxes with higher property taxes. And that gets passed on to renters too. So even if you don't own here, we're all paying for that. And that is not feasible in the long term. And it's definitely a hardship for many people who are struggling right now. So we have put a big focus on building mixed use buildings, which is fine, but that commercial space is often vacant in a lot of these buildings. And we need to incentivize the filling of that, because for some of those mixed use buildings, leaving it vacant is more financially advantageous than filling it, because they get a tax break on that when they have empty space. So we could do it. We could either give them a tax break to encourage them to fill it, or we can have a vacancy penalty tax. We could go either way there, but we have to do something to incentivize filling that vacant space. Also in the county, I know, because I own a small business here, it's challenging to operate and open a business in Arlington. So we really need to consolidate all the different offices that deal with helping people establish a building, a business, getting the permits that they need, all of that in one place. So you don't have to go to 5 different places. There's also efficiencies to be gained there as well, because some of the things that I've had to do for my business, which operates out of my home, were for people who have, buildings and things like that don't apply to me, but I still had to do them, which it made it very cumbersome. So I think there's a lot of ways that we can streamline to reduce the vacancy rate and to not have the burden all the time on the homeowner or the renter.
Thank you, Ms. Farnam. Mr. Ferranti?
Thank you. I think this is an important question and the details matter. We do have the highest vacancy rate in Virginia. We also have by far the largest office percentage of our economy of any place in Virginia. So because we have lived and prospered under a system that has office being something that almost everyone does, and the world has changed post-COVID, we are going to have a high vacancy rate. What have we done? Last year, we had transitioned 6 office buildings into residential. That brought our office vacancy down on its own by 2 percentage points. Last month, 2 more buildings in Crystal City transitioning to residential. Once those buildings come back online, those are sources of economic vibrancy for our community as a whole. That is a key piece to our strategy. It's not all of our strategy. Yesterday, we announced 400 jobs coming to us from Maryland. If you listen, and you can love Governor Wes Moore, he wishes he had our economy all the time, because Arlington is taking places like homes.com and bringing them to Arlington. We are growing our economy, but we have a structural adaptation that we have to work on. Arlington Economic Development already does that investment in bringing companies here. We need to continue to partner. As far as the Pike, we invested $95 million in the physical infrastructure of the Pike. That doesn't mean we don't have steps to work on, but we are working on them as hard as we can. Some of the other solutions I think are good ones. I'm open to them. When I invested a vacancy tax, I don't believe it's legal under the Code of Virginia and the Constitution, but open to all of those steps. Let's be clear, though, that we have a high vacancy rate because our model has been office and the world has changed. We're responding to it as fast as we can. That doesn't mean it's easy, but our tax rates are lower than Fairfax, Falls Church, and Alexandria by far. Only twice, and I do take it seriously, in the last 7 years have we raised real estate tax rates, but public safety was the reason this year why we did that.
Thank you, Mr. Ferranti. Next question will be about housing affordability. The county's made a significant commitment to housing programs. How would you expand affordable and middle-income housing? And how would you measure whether that progress is real? Relatedly, how does the missing middle, or as it's now called, expanded housing options initiative, fit into the solution? Ms. Farnam, followed by Mr. Ferranti, followed by Mr. DeVita.
Thank you for that question. So I think I want to say at the offset that we need to revisit our housing policies, because what we have now is not working. It's not working for either side. We are not getting housing affordability. We are not getting equity. We are not getting housing diversity. Last week, I took a tour of some of the homes that have been built under EHO before the court put a stop to that. And we have knocked down smaller homes, more affordable homes, and replaced them with homes that are selling for $1.6 million. That's not affordable, and that's not working. And I think we all have to admit that, and we have to revisit this issue. So things that I would do, though, in addition to revisiting that policy, I would look at lot size right now and preserving the footprint of a home that is on the lot now. And that could be that you might make multifamily homes there, but you preserve the size of the footprint of the home now, which would make it more affordable instead of building McMansions, because that is equally a big problem in raising the housing prices here in Arlington now. I'd also look at expanding auxiliary dwelling units. I hear from homeowners all the time that they want to have ADUs in their home, convert a garage, build an in-law apartment, and it's so restrictive in our county to do that it makes it challenging. So we need to do that. Also looking if we can provide incentives for making more homes for sale, because a lot of the homes that we knock down and we rebuild, even if they're multifamily homes, they become rentals. So we've seen that on South Monroe Street, for example, in Green Valley. We knocked down a smaller single-family home and we built a duplex unrelated to EHO. But now those duplexes are renting for like $4,700 a month. That's not more affordable, and it's shrinking the supply of homes available to buy. So that's something that we need to look at as well. And then I think we need to address the issue of developers outbidding families when it comes to buying. So that's something else. My time's up now, but I could talk all day about housing.
Thank you, Ms. Farnam. Mr. Ferranti?
Thank you for the question. It's an important and not an easy one. I worked for Rebuilding Together, which used to be Christmas in April, and I worked for Habitat for Humanity, both on affordable home ownership. We faced challenges in both areas. Retaining existing homeowners, which is what Rebuilding Together does. They fix and repair homes for low-income homeowners and veterans. And Habitat for Humanity is primarily for starter families that want the chance to own. They are great models, but scaling them is very, very difficult. The first thing we have to do is find resources and invest. There's a Housing Arlington plank that is affordable home ownership, and I have ideas for how to find that funding, but we need to create incentives. We are not going to be able to subsidize home ownership for everyone we wish we could do that for. We do not have the resources to fight the market at that scale, which is why if you can build a large home and have one household, you should also in that same footprint be able to fit multi-units in there, a duplex, a triplex. Even those who oppose expanded housing options grant that is some of the steps that we need to take. We should not seed zoning for the reasons that it was seeded in the 1920s, which was, it's pretty clear from the history, exclusionary. So it is a part of our solutions because we can't subsidize our way out of the homeownership challenge. There's also law relevant to, we cannot say a unit has to be rental versus homeownership because of the laws related to affirmatively furthering fair housing, which were passed in the 1960s. So we have to do significant work. I like the idea of incentivizing for teachers, firefighters, police officers, incentivizing our employees. And we also have to recognize that we used to have market rate affordable housing. Now we don't, because we are such an attractive place to live. And so we've had to invest in committed affordable housing, which we could talk further about.
Thank you, Mr. DeFranti. Mr. DeVita?
Hello? Okay. Thank you. First thing I can tell you is what I would not do. And that is I would not pass the missing middle or allow the missing middle to go into effect for a couple of reasons. Number one, it was sold to the public on the premise that it was going to produce affordable housing. And if you take a look at the prices for all these units, they're all well above $1 million. 1.4, 1.5, 1.6. That's just not affordable. So if it's not going to achieve its basic goal, what's the use of it? Secondly, if you take a look at the judge's decision that struck it down, it's gonna make living in single family neighborhoods virtually impossible. If you put a 6-unit condominium across the street from a single family home, that's 12 new cars you've got to find parking for on that street. Where are they going to go? If you overwhelm our stormwater and sewer systems, what are we going to do with that? And then there's a whole the basic. It's going to overcrowd our schools. The long and the short of it is, density is not inevitable. Density is a choice. There are other things to consider, like the quality of life. And the long and the short of it is, you can't jam these condo buildings into single family neighborhoods where they simply were never meant to be. It's just too much density and the areas can't handle it. Here's some better ideas. Number one, we have a lot of vacant office space in Arlington. I'd like to see if we can convert that to affordable housing. We can require developers to set aside units for lower and middle income people. We can ask the government to subsidize housing for low income people. And I think my idea is worthy of consideration too. We have these vacancies in the police department, the fire department, and sheriff's department. I say we offer the new recruits the chance to have free housing for 1 year. Can we afford it? As I said, $3.3 million is the cost. The budget's $1.7 billion. I think we certainly can. And if anybody wants to do something about affordable housing, why not do something concrete? Why not offer free housing so that people who work for Arlington can live in Arlington?
Thank you, Mr. DeVita. The next question is on the general topic of public safety and community well-being. As the Trump administration pushes aggressive immigration enforcement and pressures local governments to cooperate with ICE, how should the county protect Arlington's immigrant communities and maintain the public's trust and safety? And what additional steps can be taken to achieve these goals? Mr. DeFerranti, followed by Mr. DeVita, followed by Ms. Farnam.
Thank you for the question. It's a pressing one. On immigration, in 3 different stages over the last 8 years, we have adjusted our trust policy to be in accordance with the facts on the ground. And so most recently, shortly into 2025, we ended voluntary contacts between our police department and ICE. What had been the policy years back, and I worked to limit and focus the circumstances on it, and then to end it once we had the inhumanity and idiocy of the Trump administration on this issue, is we had allowed in very limited circumstances. Trust policy now, our police cannot, unless the law requires them, engage on immigration enforcement. The events in Chicago, the deaths and the killings, are examples of why we cannot have a policy whereby any voluntary cooperation can occur between our police or our sheriff's department and ICE. So that's trust policy is part of that work. But we also have to invest in our families. So in the last budget, I secured funding for 2 different streams. One, we've had about 20 people be deported. Those families need our care. So we have a targeted amount of funding in our budget that shows our values. And then there's also, we've been engaged with lawyers to help defend those who are in need. Those are a couple of different steps. We also have a liaison officer who has really brought ACPD into coordination with significant parts of our Latino community. And that is a huge step that we've taken. And we have to address the vacancies. But it is not an easy challenge. And we have to keep working at it steadily. So public safety, when you call, you need to be depending on Arlington police to keep you safe, not to engage with ICE.
Thank you, Mr. Ferranti. Mr. DeVita?
Can you hear me? All right. I'm an immigration lawyer. I've been an immigration lawyer for 20 years. My solution to the problem, send them all to my office. I'll represent them. I represent people in immigration court every day. You know what your biggest weapon is? Delay. I have a client ordered to be deported 7 years ago. 7 years I've been keeping her in this country. We have to fight it in the courts. That's the only place you can do it. You can go to court. You can ask the immigration judges for a hearing. If you lose, you take it to the Court of Appeals. It'll be there for another 3 or 4 years. Trump's only going to be in office for another 2 or 3 years. We'll just outlast him. And if we do that, we can keep all the immigrants in the country, and we can show Trump that his policy is just wrong, wrong, wrong.
Thank you, Mr. DeVita. Ms. Farnam?
So I have had a long immigration career with Department of Homeland Security. I worked there for over 15 years. 20 years ago, I did briefly work for Immigration and Customs Enforcement. It was very much a different agency then. We didn't have quotas. It was about protecting the integrity of the immigration system. And I worked for Homeland Security Investigations, which is the criminal investigative side of things. So I worked on cases like perpetrators of the Rwandan genocide who were in the Boston area. We had a denaturalization case involving an individual who had abused a child, resulting in a pregnancy. So those are the kinds of things that, you know, when ICE had integrity, they do not anymore. Those are the kinds of things that I worked on. But most of the time I was with U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, which handles the benefit ends of things with citizenship and getting a green card, things like that. So I do want to make it clear that I feel as I'm adamantly opposed to ICE as much as anyone with any sense of like basic humanity. So because what it is now is awful. But I think James is right in that you need to be able to have someone who can help our immigrants navigate the system. We do have some resources on our website. Some are good, some are not great, and some are missing. We do need to let our immigrant community know what their rights are when ICE comes knocking, because they do have rights. We need to make sure that they have access to low and no cost legal services, because immigration law is very, very complex. And then as a county, we need to really focus on those wraparound services to make sure that if they can't work, that they know how to get assistance, that they know their labor rights as well, food assistance, childcare assistance, things like that. Those, we have the ability to provide those here in the county, and we do, but not everyone may know that. And we also need those resources available in multiple languages, not just English.
Thank you, Ms. Farnam. The next question is on governance. Arlington is in the process of examining its nearly 100-year-old government structure. As this process moves forward, what reforms would you support to make the county's government more transparent, representative, and trustworthy? Mr. DeVita, followed by Ms. Farnam, followed by Mr. Ferranti.
Tap it once. Hello? Oh, it works. All right. Patrick Hope, who I am on very friendly terms with, has a proposal out there to expand the county board. And the idea would be that you would make a 7-person board with different members of the board being responsible for different geographical areas in Arlington. I think that is a wonderful idea. I think that there are definitely differences between what people in South Arlington may want, people in North Arlington may want, and people in Crystal City may want. So I think it's important to have representatives who are, living in the areas and can address the needs of the people living in those areas. So I like Patrick Hope's proposal. At this point in time, I think it's being held up by the county board, but we may hear from Mr. Ferranti as to why that has not progressed. I think it's a good idea.
Okay, here we are. All right, so a few things. First of all, I would encourage expanding the county board, the number of people on the county board. Actually, I would leave it up to the voters, and I would let the voters decide, do we want to expand it or not? It should not be my decision or even the board's decision. It should be the people's decision. I'd also advocate for having a hybrid system of both district and at-large. At-large representation was originally created to dilute minority voices. And so I think having a combination of both is a good idea. I would also strongly advocate having the county manager being elected. We need to provide better oversight and accountability with the county manager's office, and I don't think our county board does a very good job at that now. Regarding transparency, two things. One, I think we can do a better job with our Freedom of Information Act requests. I know that there are things that have been requested and released to the requesters that are not on our website. And we should just be transparent about that. Once something is requested, then, and if it's released, that whatever that has been released needs to be put on the website. And it needs to be easy to navigate, because it is not easy now to navigate on our website and to find things. So we need to do that. We need to do a better job at that. And then when we get comments back for whatever project or proposal we're working on, I want to see those comments adjudicated. I want them to say, sort of like federal rulemaking, not to be too wonky here, but, okay, we got 10 comments on this issue, and this is why we're incorporating it. We got 5 comments on this issue, and this is why we're not incorporating it. So people feel like they're heard, like that their comments matter, that their opinions matter, and it's being considered and in the final policy making. So I do think we need to provide that feedback to the community. We do it on some things, but not consistently.
Thank you. Mr. Ferranti?
Thank you for the question. I support Patrick Hope's bill. It has 3 parts. It has a piece on districts. It has a piece on directly electing the county chair, and it has a piece on expanding the board. But mostly, first and foremost, it shifts the power on who decides this from Richmond to Arlington. Love Virginia, want Arlington to make the choices about how we're governed. That's what he is doing with his bill. We've had a discussion last year and the start of this bill, this year, about, in addition to the choice about the state code, we have a chapter, it's just for the county manager plan, form of government. We as a community need to have a conversation about what reforms we think will serve us the best. And I agreed belatedly, but I agreed and credit colleagues for pointing out the primacy of the budget challenge we faced this year. So we delayed for 6 months and are doing some interim work on the governance questions, both the legal analysis and the history. Julie's right. The history of at-large districts is typically racially exclusionary. That doesn't mean that there aren't benefits to Arlington's system. Just compare Arlington's system to the 8 wards in DC, or Chicago's system where you have to go to an alderman or woman in order to get an affordable housing project approved, which leads to NIMBYism. So I actually support a hybrid system as well. I think that the majority of the board should be at large because we can consider issues that impact all of Arlington. But I do think that if you have a street light problem, who do you go to right now on the board? I do think there's some merits to considering districts. But I'm not so presumptuous as to say I should make these choices without the full community conversation that needs to occur. And that's what's ahead of us. And before the end of the year, I'll be asking these questions. I have been, to your question, James, I have been in the minority supporting Patrick Hope's bill, but I do believe we're going to bring this to a vote by the end of the year.
Thank you. Next question is about schools. One of the largest items in the county's annual budget is the transfer to Arlington Public Schools. What steps can the county board take to ensure that those funds are being expended as effectively as possible? Ms. Farnam, followed by Mr. Ferranti, followed by Mr. DeVita.
Thank you for that question. So I think it's a few things. One, I think we do need to have better collaboration between the county board and the school board, ongoing. It cannot be just, a couple work sessions. It needs to be continuous communication between the two boards. I know previous, and I don't think it's this way with Matt as the chair, but previous chairs have restricted board member to board member communication and wanted everything to go through the chair. That is, aside from being super micromanaging, is hinders communication and collaboration, and that creates problems for the school board, and it should be an ongoing conversation. The other thing that I want to highlight too is that with the school board and with their budget, the bonds that we do for school, that comes out of the school board budget rather than out of the county budget. And that's done differently in other counties. So when we say we spend X amount of money per student, we're actually counting like those bonds and paying back those bonds and the interest. And so it artificially inflates how much we're spending for each child. And that's something I think we need to change too, because then it will give us a more accurate representation of what we're actually spending on students and making sure that the money that the school board gets goes to the students.
Thank you for the, I think, over to me. Thank you for the question. So we had a joint work session with the school board this afternoon, and I do agree that there needs to be sustained regular engagement between the school board and the county board. And I have sought to work on that steadily. I have one-on-one meetings with every school board member, and I agree that full communication between the two boards is necessary. So many people live in Arlington because they love our schools. That's the history of the last 30 years. We have to keep investing in our schools, and we have to pay our teachers in order to do it. That is a priority that is key to me because I began my career as a teacher in the school where Barbara Jordan grew up, which many of you in the room will know. Efficiency of spending, state code prohibits us from legally taking steps to say, we like that project and not that project. But the relationships are critical to how you do things and how you engage in a way that asks for efficiency. Arlington's model is far superior to Fairfax, where I grew up. Fairfax, the school board sometimes just says, show us the money. That is not how our school board members work, and that partnership is critical. So it's relationships over time that are important, and I think it's important to invest in both our teachers, but also in the bonds that we have passed year after year, because facilities are relevant. They're not as important as the teachers who are in the room, but they are relevant. If you have a dilapidated school, I can tell you, because I went to a school that had nothing on the walls when I taught. And that has an impact on the students. So we need to continue to invest in the capital side of our schools. But I think there's a fair concern about making our schools architect renowned. That is not where we need to go. We have some programs that are unique to Arlington to help our students with special needs that Julie is right about we need to continue. And it's a challenging problem.
There are three things that I'm interested in terms of education. One is expanded internship programs for students. I hear so often these days that a lot of students are left behind, particularly the kids who aren't going to college. I want to make sure that we not just graduate them, but we look after them after they leave the school, make sure that they become functioning members of society. And I think internship programs, something to get them in the door for employment before they leave school, I think that would be a tremendous help. Secondly, mental health counseling. I just don't believe we have enough mental health counselors at the schools. I think if you get mental health counseling to students early, that small problems don't become big problems. I think that's something that we definitely need to do. And the third thing is more long term. Right now, we have students in Arlington County going to school in trailers. This is the richest county in the country. Why can't we have enough school buildings for all these kids? It just seems to me it's just one more area where the county board, I think, has let down the population. We have the money. We can build the schools. Why do we have our school children sitting in trailers? I think we need to pay attention to them. I think we have to provide them facilities. And I think that we have to look out for our kids, make sure that not only do they just go to college, but for the kids who aren't going to college, make sure that they have a job, make sure that they can take care of their families, make sure that we don't just graduate them and just let them go.
Thank you. Next question is on capital investment and long-term planning. With federal support increasingly unreliable, Arlington may need to support more of its capital needs on its own. How would you prioritize major investments in utilities, parks, and transportation while keeping the tax burden manageable? Mr. Ferranti, followed by Mr. DeVita, followed by Ms. Farnam.
Thank you for the question. The first thing we should do, and if you know the history of the work that I've done trying to elect state delegates and members of Congress that are Democrats, is we must change the House of Representatives and the Senate in November. That is a responsibility of every elected official and everyone in this room, because it's existential that we change that. And that will have an impact on the federal funding lack of priorities or idiotic priorities that this administration is all about. But focusing on the county board's sort of job description role. On transportation, I'm an alternate on the Metro board. Metro is the backbone of our economy. It is what has made us wealthy with transit-oriented development over the last 30, 40 years. And so we have to invest in Metro. That means advocacy that we started this year when I was on a DMV Moves regional committee, but we didn't finish because we were not able to get capital long-term funding done in this legislature. And it is not about Arlington Democrats or Arlington leaders. It's the responsibility of the entire Commonwealth and all of the Democrats in the Senate and the House, as well as the governor, to get that done next year. I commit to working assiduously on that if I have the opportunity over the coming years, months and years. On utilities and parks, we are making significant investments, and I would argue that our capital damage from the federal pieces is most felt not in those two categories, but in the categories of climate change, wherein we all know that this president doesn't believe in wind or solar or really common sense on those issues. We are struggling with investments there that are future opportunities. We are seeing more minor reductions in capital spending. 26 years in a row, we have had a triple AAA bond rating. So at some point, those who say we're in a fiscal nightmare are going to have to square that with the 26 years in a row that we have invested in our community and grown our economy. And so that does not mean it's not easy. It's easy for all of us. And we need to be keenly aware of that. But on capital, we're making smart investments by and large.
In terms of capital improvement, I think the first thing I would advocate is what I already mentioned. I think that we should do more to build school buildings so our children aren't sitting in trailers. Between the three of those things, parks, utilities, and transportation, I think the parks in Arlington right now are just fine. Anybody who's actually gone out to the parks in Arlington knows that they're first rate. I don't think we need to spend more money on parks. In terms of utilities, one thing that I would ask for, I drive an electric vehicle, and I think electric vehicles are the way of the future. The only two problems with electric vehicles, one is range, but then the other one is the lack of charging stations. I'm lucky enough to have a charging station in my building, But I think Arlington should lead the way in convincing people who own apartment buildings and people who have businesses here to have electric vehicle charging stations everywhere. And if you encourage that, it will grow. And I would just ask everybody in this room to consider one thing. When gas prices are going up and you have an electric vehicle, do you think it really bothers you? Probably not. Electric vehicles are the way of the future. I think anybody who wants to should be able to have an electric vehicle, and I think everybody who wants to have a charging station should have access to them. In terms of transportation, I think the metro is a wonderful thing. I think everybody should have access to low-cost public transportation. And long term, I don't see why we can't have a metro line under Columbia Pike. When you look at what drove the development in the Wilson Boulevard corridor, it was the metro. The metro is what made that area grow. Why can't South Arlington have the same thing that the Wilson Boulevard corridor has? It seems to me long term that if you really want Arlington to grow, if you want to bring in new business, if you want to make South Arlington at least the equivalent of North Arlington, I think long term we have to look at putting a metro line underneath Columbia Pike.
So I think first and foremost, what we need to do is we need to have a strategic plan, which we don't. The school board has one, but the county board does not. And we need to be thinking long term. And we need to prioritize, like, what do we want to spend our money on and what are just nice to haves kind of thing. Like what are things that are absolutely necessary and what is discretionary spending. We didn't do that. We haven't traditionally done that with our budget. We certainly didn't do it this year. So that's one thing. And then we also need to look at, how do we get some new sources of revenue? So we can fund these things that we want to do and also not always put the burden on taxpayers. So those are two things. But I think, James is right with looking at schools. As we focus on development in the county, we're not looking at it necessarily holistically. So like my daughter here tonight, she goes to Oak Ridge. That is one of the most crowded schools in Arlington. And we have the Melwood development that is going up soon. And that's going to further strain the number of students at that school that's already overcrowded. And yes, there are students still in trailers there. So we need to address that and we need to look at it with different sources of revenue, with looking at what we should be spending money on and how to prioritize that. And then also with utilities too. Again, with the development, we're putting a lot of strain on the utilities. How closely are we working with the utility companies? Our rates keep going up and up and up. So when are they going to make the upgrades to the infrastructure? So we need to make sure that that's being done as well.
Thank you, Ms. Farnam. The next question is about homelessness. There are a number of people facing homelessness in the corridor and in other areas in Arlington. Many of them have mental health disorders. What can be done to address the homelessness situation in Arlington and to ensure the DHS has adequate funding for their services for the unhoused? Mr. DeVita, followed by Ms. Farnam, followed by Mr. Ferranti.
Hello? Okay. This is an area that I actually care very much about. I care about it passionately. I'm an attorney and I do criminal law. And one thing that you see over and over again is people being caught up in the criminal justice system, not because they have some evil intent, but they're mentally ill and they just can't simply navigate the world the way that you and I would be able to do. And it becomes a revolving door where these people go into the jail, they come out, and they come out, they're homeless, and it just keeps going round and round and round and round. And I think that what we need to do, perhaps in coordination with the sheriff, is start to divert a lot of these people rather than running them through the criminal justice system. I think that what we need to do is to target them early and then make sure that they have the resources they need. The other thing I would advocate, if we don't have enough space, build some shelters. You don't necessarily have to put them in my neighborhood, but you can put them somewhere. And the long and the short of it is that I think, no, it was just a joke. What I'm basically trying to say is the people who are out in the streets, a lot of times they don't want to be on the street. They want to be housed. They want to have employment. They want to make sure that they have enough food to eat. I really do feel for people like that. And I think if I could do anything, like I said, try to divert these people as they come into the criminal justice system. Try to get them the resources they need to make sure that they can take care of themselves. I think that the true measure of a society is how we treat the people who are the least fortunate.
So, the people that you see on the street who are homeless do not represent the whole population of homelessness in a county. Actually, most of the people who are homeless are not the ones that you see on the street. So we need to look at why are people homeless, and there's a different reasons, right? Some of that could be that people need domestic violence help in getting away from their abuser, and they find themselves in a financial situation where they can't afford homes. So that's one issue that we would need to address. And then, as James mentioned, it's mental health and it's addiction, right? And so getting those services and making sure that we have drug treatment, but more than that, and we have done a little bit of this over the past couple of years, particularly in our schools in the wake of the overdoses that we had at some of our high schools, preventative information and making sure that people don't start using drugs, because it's a lot easier to not start than it is to quit. So making sure we have those. But as far as what we can do in the county too, I think we do need to shift rather than keep funding, or we still need to fund DHS, but rather than giving all our money to them, I think we should be looking at how we can transition some of those services to community-based organizations. Because when it's the government administering these benefits, it's very bureaucratic, right? It can take them a long time to get the services they need and like the paperwork, and it's just bureaucratic. And so what we need to do is we need to shift some of that to the community-based organizations who can get the services to people who need them the most faster and often at a lower cost. So incorporating more of that into our county.
Thank you for the question. You may remember in my introduction, I talked about what I've done in the last 2 weeks on this, and I don't know whether that unhoused individual will stick with the services that Path Forward is providing and be a success story, but I do know that he wasn't making progress on Barton Street off Columbia Pike near Penrose. This has been a priority for me for a long time. And this past year and a half, in the last year's budget, we took an enormous step forward. Due respect to prior county boards, we have not been funding our homeless services providers at the levels that we need. If there's a turnover in staff all the time, our homeless service providers won't do the job they need to do. This is Doorways, Path Forward, and Path Forward has now taken over a facility called the Residential Program Center, which is down kind of near the Sheraton. It's kind of tucked along Washington Boulevard. We need more beds, and that means we need to fix the Residential Program Center. Our point in time count, which I go almost every year to, is in January or February. And if you want to feel the humanity and the urgency, go on a point in time count. It's up slightly, and that is because we're facing so many challenges. But we are investing in our nonprofit community. Opportunity grants, which used to be called equity grants, they are up. And I have stood for those in our budget again and again and asked the social safety net providers, of which there are 20 or so, if I fight for those resources, and I absolutely do. Julie is right that our CBOs and nonprofits are a critical part and they need to be funded. I would also say, and I got to support a lot of folks. I don't have the support of everyone, but on diversion and criminalizing poverty, give credit in the back to Parissa Degani-Tafty because she has led on these issues. And I'll also say, give credit to my colleagues on the county board because our public safety vision in this year's budget was about $5 million in funding to address police vacancies, $5 million in ongoing funding for fire, and resources for those critical diversion services like our public defender and also Restorative Arlington. That's what we did and are doing. If you let me continue, I'll keep doing it.
Thank you. When I agreed to be moderator, it was on the condition that I get to choose the final question. And so it's about leaf blowers. Many Arlington residents and workers have raised concerns about gas-powered leaf blowers. If this comes before the county board, what approach to phasing, exemptions, enforcement, and small business support would make a transition both effective and fair? Ms. Farnam, followed by Mr. Ferranti, followed by Mr. DeVita.
Okay, well, I love your final question. So, all right. So with leaf blowers, I would prioritize corporations to get rid of them first, gas-powered ones. And then homeowners, I'd like to phase it out over a certain number of years. We can decide as a community what that right time frame would be. I think they are just naturally kind of phasing out as it is now. I'd also think about like the noise, and that's not something the county can necessarily control or mandate that people have less noisy ones, but there are less noisy ones. But that's something I'd want to like consider. If we're telling people they need to phase it out, maybe put recommendations for, you know, these are some of the more quieter models too, because I get a lot of, I'm my HOA president and I get a lot of complaints about that too.
Thank you for the question. We have banned leaf blowers, but have a 3-year implementation phase. So that's the state of where we already are. And it's not because I sought to serve on the county board to address leaf blowers. I can assure you, I did not. But in addition to the equity issues that James raises about investing in the Pike, which the economy of our whole community needs to benefit, and the history is we didn't invest in the Pike as much as we did in North Arlington. We also have to govern and listen to our community. And I can tell you that there are people in this room whose quality of life and whose top 2 or 3 issues are leaf blowers. We have to listen to our entire community and have an equity lens. And so I believe there's an attorney general's opinion by the prior attorney general. I don't think it's the right conclusion, but it is basis to accelerate. What I've done on this issue already, the county is way past Fairfax, Alexandria in transitioning already from gas to electric leaf blowers. That is lead by example. But there are equity issues in who provide the companies that provide the services and their small businesses. So there's implementation issues. I'm not at a place where I think that economic incentives is the right policy, but I do think we need to continually consider whether 3 years is too long and we can accelerate, because this is a governance issue that if we don't listen to our entire community, we've discovered in the last election, presidential election, and in elections after elections, that if people think that we are pontificating about what they must do and not listening to what they need, they will not give us the chance to govern as a party. And they have fair reason not to. So this is an important issue. We've made progress. We can continue to make progress. And there's a whole lot of detailed work on implementation that we need to continue to do. But the bottom baseline is we have already banned them. We're implementing it over time because implementing it tomorrow is not a practical way to work this.
I got to agree with the whole sentiment that they should be phased out. I've been out in neighborhoods talking to voters when all of a sudden a leaf blower will start up and I'll keep talking, but nobody actually hears a word I'm saying. And then finally I say, vote DeVita. So long and the short of it is they're really noisy. I think that electric leaf blowers might be a solution. The long and the short of it is I think we should certainly put the onus on business first. I mean, I can't imagine it would cost that much to invest in an electric leaf blower. If we can get people to stop doing it completely, that would be wonderful. I used to rake leaves when I was a kid. It's kind of fun. You get out there, it's a nice day, you rake the leaves, you know. I don't put them in a bonfire anymore, but I used to do that when I was a kid. And I don't see any reason why we can't encourage people to get out and get some exercise. So if the county board wants to ban them, I'm all for it.
Thank you. And now it's time for closing statements from each of the candidates. It'll be Mr. Ferranti, followed by Mr. DeVita, followed by Ms. Farnam.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here and join you. This is an 80-minute debate, so if you're still here, you're kind, and we're grateful. I'll just say that on every issue, I would love to answer more of your questions. The details matter, and I want to listen and lead over the coming years. Arlington is a great community. I'll share the 4 priorities that I committed to at the start of this year: stabilizing our economy and positioning us for recovery and growth, protecting and serving our most vulnerable, keeping our communities safe by delivering public safety, as I've just touched in the last answer, and protecting the investments that make Arlington a great place to live, our environment, schools, and our children. Our economy is much more than just this year's budget. We must adapt to the new realities and invest in our talented workforce. Second, our most vulnerable. Arlington Democrats care about hunger, eviction prevention, and our social safety net. We have done a lot to be a more equitable government over the last 4 years, but we are not done. The American dream doesn't fairly and equally touch every zip code in Arlington. And if you give me the chance to keep leading, I'll work to make it better apply to everyone. Third, public safety. I didn't come in to office, and I will ask, but I may not get every public safety union's endorsement. I will ask, but it was the right thing to do with 63 vacancies out of 350 police officers to invest $5 million in ongoing to address that problem. And it was right for our firefighters. We need to invest in public safety. And that means not only those folks, it also means our immigrant families and communities. We need to stand with them. And I did earlier this year. And believe me, I heard about it online and through all sorts of terrible comments that I got that I won't go into more details on. And lastly, our schools. Cherrydale Library, a right-sized approach to our fiscal support for gymnastics. Those are tough. They might be not, quote, core services, but I can tell you they're part of what makes Arlington a uniquely great place to live. And that's part of why those 4 priorities, why I ask for your vote in the primary June 18th to August 4th. Thank you.
I'm a trial lawyer. Every day, clients call me up and they say, Mr. DeVita, please help me. I'm lost. I do not know what to do. And I tell them, don't worry. I'll fight for you. I'll make sure that your voice is heard. And if you elect me to the county board, I intend to do the same thing for you. If you ask me, Arlington County and the Democratic Party in general are lost. Donald Trump is a pathological liar. He's a sociopath with no sense of empathy. His policies are based on hatred and deliberate cruelty. We as Democrats should be winning easily, but we haven't won. And in my opinion, the simple reason is the current leadership of the Democratic Party doesn't know what to do. They don't know how to fight. I do. I fight with people all day long. It's what I do. And I believe that is what Arlington needs, someone to fight for the little guy, someone to fight for people in need, someone who's not afraid of billionaires or dictators, someone who's willing to stand up to the Republican Party and say no more. Crawl back into that deep, dark hole from which you emerged. Take your hatred and your cruelty and go home. Arlington County, give me a chance, and I will fight for you.
I want to close tonight with a question for all of you. What do you value? Do you value making Arlington affordable for people who live here? If you do, you won't vote for someone who raises our taxes and our housing prices. Do you value human rights? If you do, you won't vote for someone who disbanded the Human Rights Commission rather than work with them to address the concerns they were shining a light on. Do you value ethics in our politics? If you do, you'll support candidates who are willing to implement an ethics policy for the board. You have a choice this election. Vote for what you value or vote for loyalty to the party elites. We all share the same goal of wanting a Democrat to win and wanting to make this community better. To do that, we need to recognize that this job is not about power or being able to boast, I'm on the county board. It's about making sure the people and the businesses of Arlington are taken care of. This is the fundamental function of a government. It's about spending taxpayer money responsibly. It's about acknowledging the contributions those mom and pop shops make to this community. It's about recognizing the impacts the decisions we make have on our educators, our public safety officials, our restaurant staff, our gig workers, and all the others who form the backbone of this community. That's what this is all about. And the incumbent has had 8 years to stand up for the good people of Arlington, to lift them up. But he's made it harder, not easier, to live and work in this county. It's time for a change. It's time to elect someone with solutions, real practical solutions, and who will put in the work, read the briefing materials that come in from the community before meetings, and the hours, put in the hours and put in the effort needed to achieve those solutions. It's time to elect someone who has the backbone to stand up and fight for the residents and businesses in this county. I'm that person, and I will work to uphold those values that we all hold dear and that are all meaningful to us. Rank Julie Farnam #1 this primary. Thank you so much.
I want to thank all of you for coming out tonight and participating in what I think was a very valuable forum. One thing that's stuck with me over almost a half century of involvement in Arlington activities is the huge number of men and women who are willing to sacrifice time with family and other personal commitments, as well as professional responsibilities, to give to their community. So let's have a round of applause for these 3 people and their willingness to put themselves forward as candidates.